Hello, folks, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Monday, September 27th. Hope you all had a great weekend. And before I dive in and do the intros, I just want to say thank you all so much for the feedback you provided over the weekend on our new and improved Crypto 2.0 room. Very excited that you guys are excited. That's what our whole goal was. But we're going to continue to be bringing improvements throughout the week. And today at 11:30 Central Time, CJ and I will be hosting a webinar where we'll walk through the new platform, take any questions you guys have, and just look forward in the next couple of weeks and talk about some of the things we have coming to the new crypto room. So exciting stuff, but the price action, maybe not so exciting. Looks like there's still some indecisiveness amongst the traders in the market today, but we'll dive into that and a whole lot more. But before we do, Doc Crypto, CJ, how you guys doing today?
I'm doing well. Down here, it's, let me see, 87 degrees in Puerto Rico. And as you see, it really is terrible weather down here. But I got in last night at about 4 o'clock. Got to put in a couple days down here, and then I'll meet you guys in Vegas. I'll be heading out to Vegas Thursday, I guess, this week for the big Market Rebellion stock options futures crypto conference at the ARIA. I can't wait. And by the way, folks, you can still grab a seat even if we're sold out in person. You could still, if you go to marketrebellion.com/events, you could grab a virtual seat, or if somebody needed to give their seat up because they can't travel for one reason or another, it might be listed there. So marketrebellion.com/events, and we'll all be there. And Monty, I think I saw some pictures of you in Vegas this weekend.
No, not in Vegas. Those are actually some older pictures. My girlfriend and I were at a wedding, but I am very, very excited for Vegas. Last time we were there, it was very different. The crypto market was in a very different spot. CJ and I were kind of, just walking around the conference, meeting people. I think it's going to be very different this time around. Super excited to meet lots of these people that are in the chat every morning in the Daily Crypto Byte. So it's going to be great. And I also see that we have the one and only AJ Monty in the chat today. He will also be in Vegas. He's driving his RV out there. So drive safe, AJ. I'm not sure if he's out there yet already or if he's still on the way.
He can't be out there already. He was still in Florida Friday, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think he was leaving. I think he was planning on leaving after the cocktail hour. So,
damn, if he drove straight through, he might be able to. But I bet he takes his time a little bit and enjoys the ride more. I'm not sure. AJ, tell us in the comments what you're doing.
But yeah, very
not
excited.
While you're driving, though, AJ. Not while you're driving.
Yes. Very excited about Vegas. It's going to be a lot of fun. CJ and I have some exciting stuff for crypto plans. Saturday is actually going to be a lot about crypto, John. I know you have some exciting talks with Jordan Freed, also Steve from Voyager, and a whole lot more. So we're really, really excited for that. And it's just a few days away now, so getting close.
Yeah. And in fact, Jordan and I were conversing this weekend. He is excited to be there, and Charlie Shrem will be there too.
Yes.
I mean, again, you guys should be there in person. If you can't, he's driving through Texas, AJ says. All right, AJ, have a great time through there, and make sure you grab some barbecue if you get anywhere near Austin or Waco, because some of the best barbecue on the planet. Of course, hard to find a bad barbecue place in Texas. But yeah, Charlie Shrem's going to be there. Charlie's another guy that was integral, not just to me getting into crypto, guys, but he was the guy that was buying crypto for the Winklevoss twins when they charged him with, hey, go buy us $10 million worth of Bitcoin. And he started buying it at $9 a coin for them. By the way, I was with the head of the Winklevoss family office last night, Sterling Wetsky, in San Juan. And Sterling, spectacular lady. And hopefully we'll get those guys at the conference next year, guys. You know, it's close, but, you know, because we're sponsored by Voyager, it's a little tough sometimes to get guys that are pretty much direct competitors. But these guys are definitely OGs in crypto, and it'd be interesting to hear their thoughts, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those are as OG as it gets, the Winklevoss twins. But I'm very excited to hear what Steve has to say. I know a lot of our customers, are big time VGX traders, so it's going to be great to have him at the conference, hear what he has to say, hear what Voyager has in plan for us. Because as Dirk keeps pointing out, they have a desktop platform that is just around the corner. So we're very excited about that. But let's dive into some technicals. What do you say, CJ? I see you chomping at the bit there to get to some charts, my friend. What have you got lined up for us today?
We've got a lot to cover today. I'm very excited. A lot of developments this weekend. But also, I think there's a lot of comparisons that we can draw from, our previous kind of macro distribution cycle up here back at the top around 65K, as well as what we're seeing now. There are a lot of technical similarities, but I also think that it's important to recognize some of the fundamental differences, because we're actually seeing accumulation on behalf of whale traders as well as miners. I think we can make an assumption. Whereas we saw much more strong indications of distribution when we were at the top at around 65K here. And so I'll start by outlining kind of the bearish case, or, our downside risk potential. That's what I'd like to say. And so from the bearish case, you can see when we started flipping. Let me go ahead and change this real quickly. When the 20 smooth moving average here slipped from support to resistance and we put in that lower high, I think that's what AJ Monty would refer to as the kiss of death. And then, of course, we experienced capitulation shortly after that. Leading up to that event, when we were creating consistent higher highs, we had a bearish divergence in the MACD as well as the RSI when they were both creating lower high after lower high. And, we are seeing something a little bit similar now. We're seeing negative momentum and a bearish divergence in the RSI and MACD as price continued to create these higher highs here. And now the 20 smooth moving average has flipped from support to resistance, similar to how it did right here. And so, I guess you could call this a kiss of death if you were just looking at it solely based on the technical formation. Now, in terms of downside risk potential, relative to where our last correction occurred, it really formed support at the start of our previous move, when that trend started. So if we are to correct back in a bearish posture, and if the S&P continues to struggle this week, then our downside potential could be at that previous support level of where this initial move started, right at roughly 37K. So ultimately, I'm looking at that towards the downside risk potential. And a lot of that is very contingent on the S&P. I really like this chart here. It gives a really nice illustration of, how the S&P and overall markets going risk off has really led to some harsh drawdowns in the price of Bitcoin. Obviously, COVID was our very famous one, where we dropped about 40 to 50% in one day. And then, of course, we've gone down quite a bit as the S&P has hit its recent top. So that is probably the most dangerous downside potential in terms of Bitcoin, is very reliant on the S&P 500. But now let's go to the bullish case, and the thing that I think is a little bit more interesting going into the end of the year here. And I want to talk about fundamentals and adding a little bit of context to the technicals that we just discussed. There are a couple key differences between this area of distribution and what we're seeing now, because I think what we're seeing now is the beginning of accumulation. And if we zoom in here, we actually have a potential inverse head and shoulders pattern, because we have our left shoulder here You know, that came with the capitulation candle, came down once again to form that head with a consistent volume profile of an inverse head and shoulders pattern. If we are to consolidate back up at about 45 to 46K, that's when I think we have a much higher chance of actually breaking to the upside and following through with a potential inverse head and shoulders pattern. Now, let's talk about key differences in fundamentals between now and back then. Something that is very interesting that I guess we can start with is that we're just not seeing the aspects of distribution coming from the whale traders like we did back when we fell and created that initial lower high. You know, even after putting in our recent lower high, whales are still buying and they're still accumulating at these levels. Thanks to Willy Woo for this comical chart, as always. But also, I think another microcosm of what's going on in the crypto space has to do with the miners and the sell pressure or the lack of sell pressure that they've been putting on the market. You know, seemingly when we saw our initial, distribution phase leading up to that, we had an enormous amount of miners sending their Bitcoin onto exchanges to presumably sell them. But what we're seeing now is far different. We're actually seeing a decrease in miner transactions and inflows to exchanges. So what that allows us to imply is that miners are holding their coins right now and are still bullish, and they're not going to be as enthusiastic to unleash a bunch of sell pressure onto the market and take profit like they were up here. So there's a couple of key differences that I think we're seeing now fundamentally as opposed to what we saw back at 65 and 55K. But I think a lot of it's going to depend on the S&P, and then, equity's got a lot of work to do. But what do you think, gentlemen?
Yeah, absolutely, CJ. And I just want to quickly share this one chart because I think it actually does really back up that information you were just talking about pretty well. That's this data here from Glassnode. And if you just take this is a great metric for taking a look at whale wallets. This is the number of addresses with a balance greater than 1,000 Bitcoin. And like CJ pointed out, there are some inherent differences between what we saw back here in May and what we're seeing now. And like he pointed out, it's primarily the accumulation and distribution of the whales. So as you can see here, when we were topping in May, this was from this point here, it was steady distribution all the way until just last night, where we saw the first uptick in addresses above 1K for the first time since before this whole accumulation phase right here. So I'm encouraged by the fact that whales are accumulating at this level. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can get a better idea of kind of how profound this effect actually is. As you can see, this is a big uptick, and it happened just last night. The number of balances greater than 1K was about 2,140 last night. And as of this morning, it went up by about 35 wallets. So that's a lot of Bitcoin being accumulated by whales. And I think it speaks to exactly what CJ was talking about, that, the big players in this market are not demonstrating the same behaviors they were showing in May. Rather than distributing into strength, they're accumulating right now. And I think that makes sense given what we've been seeing technically and the fact that Bitcoin is continually holding up at the 40K level. It seems like many whales believe that this could be, a price floor and that there's good support there. And overall, we can just infer that they are intent at accumulating at these levels. So interesting stuff here from Glassnode, and I think it ties in nicely with what CJ was just talking about there.
Well, I have to agree. I've been looking at, as you guys know, those 3 V's as usual: volume, volatility, and velocity. Velocity is rearing its ugly head in the U.S. 10-year. And some of you are thinking, well, what does that have to do, Doc, with Bitcoin or the markets? They kind of get it in the markets, but we're rapidly moving to, and perhaps even today we might move through 150 in the 10-year. And that's something that will make, and obviously has made, NASDAQ nervous. It will make S&P stocks more nervous than Dow stocks, and that's why we're seeing that big divergence there. And it may, in the very short term, just like the China news last week, be a negative for Bitcoin. Short term. Long term, China leaving is great for Bitcoin, I think. We would all say that China not controlling 75% of hash power is a good thing. And they've already, dipped way below half of that as they're pushing all the miners out of the country, which will pretty much be accomplished by the end of the year. They'll have almost zero hash power coming out of China. And then the fact that short-term rates jumping like this make markets nervous, I think it's going to be another opportunity for Bitcoin. So volatility is still high for Bitcoin, but because it's been hovering, we talked about that 4% level and how I was looking to be a seller up there and having it go back down to 3 from a 4 handle. Again, a 3 handle is 48, and a 4 handle, that's 4 percentage points, is 64, because it's 16 times 4, which would be 64. But anyway, I think we go back down to that lower volatility, especially if we get what I bet the three of us are all thinking, and that is that we see an end of the year rally out of Bitcoin and the altcoins. And so I would also point out, guys, just quickly what Sentiment was saying, because they had a tweet out. Let me see, I saved that tweet. Ethereum has rebounded back to 3163. This was their tweet just a little bit ago. In the past year, 1/3 of ETH supply was on exchanges. Now it has moved off, and that's a good sign for patient hodlers. And those of you who are longtime traders like CJ and Monty, you'll know that when we see wallets taking, people taking things off into their hardware wallets, not leaving them on exchanges, that normally means they're not trading, they're holding. And they've accumulated at various levels and they want to hold it. Doesn't mean they won't trade out of it if we go back to 4,000 and so forth, but for the short term at least, it's usually a bullish sign when you see people taking ETH or Bitcoin or anything else off exchange. And that's what Sentiment is pointing out in their tweet today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, John. That is critical information, is the amount of Bitcoin that is moving to and from exchanges. And that's something that we look at often. And I think that I'm glad you mentioned the 10-year treasury yield, because I think that nervousness is kind of a theme that we've been seeing in the market over the last 2 weeks. And I think we're continuing to see it this morning. Although we are seeing those bullish metrics, like you mentioned, Bitcoin flowing off exchanges, whale wallets increasing, there's just not that mania that we typically see that drives the market higher. But what I will say is those things that you mentioned, John, are precursors to that next leg up. Typically in a market cycle, we'll see whale wallets increasing. We'll see Bitcoin moving off of exchanges. It sort of creates this artificial supply shock that really is sort of the catalyst to that next leg up. So right now, we're not seeing great volume across the board in many assets. I think that has to do with what you said, John, and just sort of the nervousness that's permeating the market this week. But overall, if you take a step back and look at some of those macro sentiment indicators that you mentioned there, I think it does paint a pretty bullish picture for Bitcoin. Maybe not so much in the short term, but definitely over the next couple months here. So thanks for sharing that info.
Sure, thank you.
But any doges of the day today, like I said, kind of low volume across the board, but still some pretty interesting price action in some assets. Curious to see if there's any on your guys' radar today.
I was all bulled up about my Cardano purchase last week as it made a nice move, but then it's pulled back to 220, 221. Still decent, but I was really all bulled up, as you guys know, for this thing to go 250, 260, and then I'd start taking some profits. So I'm not giving up the ghost, but basically it's trading sideways right here now. ADA, Cardano. I also bought more Hashcraft, HBAR, Hedera last week, and it's not a big winner yet. It's up a penny, but I'm willing to hold. And if things play out the way I think they will, guys, the way we just spoke of, I think it's short-term sideways and then longer-term up.
Monty, do you have any?
Yeah, so I have one Doge sort of that I've been talking a lot about this asset over the last couple of weeks, because I think that it's encouraging that it's showing strength into a relatively mild market, and that is Avax. So today, there aren't many assets that are putting in bullish candles. Avax is one of them, but like I keep pointing out, the volume is a bit discouraging. We have this steadily declining volume here while we're continuing to trend up, which is kind of a bearish indicator that perhaps we're losing momentum to the upside. That being said, the fact that this asset continues to trend upwards into a market that is failing to make new all-time highs, I think speaks to the strength of the fundamentals of AVAX. And I talked about it on the cocktail hour on Friday. I've talked about it on the show last week, but this has been an asset that largely benefited from the increase in congestion on the ETH network. As you can see, it sort of had this paradigm shift starting right around here on August 16th when we started that whole NFT mania during the month of August. So I think that AVAX has kind of entered a new state, a new phase of its life as a crypto asset here. And I think that the fact that it's showing strength here and getting a nice bullish engulfing candle while the rest of the market is still looking very indecisive is something that's worth noting. So I'll be watching AVAX closely. I've been waiting for it to break above its previous all-time high to perhaps enter a trade. But I think that a lot of it's going to be contingent on Bitcoin's price performance over the next week. So AVAX, I think, is just one to watch out for in this current market.
Yeah, I was going to choose AVAX as well because aside from the kind of drop off in volume, it's pretty interesting. Also, one thing I wanted to share about AVAX, and Monty, you may have known about this already because this is slightly old news from September 9th, but Topps baseball cards, NFTs, are now on AVAX, which is pretty interesting to have such a large business really decide to put their products on AVAX. So I think it's very promising, it endorses the legitimacy of the blockchain, and I think it's nice. So another asset that I would think about, maybe being a little patient in the short term, but still very bullish long term, is just Solana. We're having declining sell pressure and declining sell volume as price is able to hold the 20 smooth moving average on the daily. Not completely seeing any bullish divergences from the oscillators yet, but this is one that I think is going to be around like HBAR, and a lot of these high throughput utility chains I think are going to be very interesting targets going into the end of the year.
Completely agreed. People like speed, people like cheap transactions, and I think that retail traders will definitely look to those sectors. So those are some interesting picks. Thank you very much, CJ. But I think that's all we got for today. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, we will be doing a webinar today at 11:30 Central Time, where we'll be walking through our new platform and fielding any questions from you guys about the new features or what's coming soon. So definitely check that out. We'll be posting a link in the chat here in just a couple minutes. So head over there and check that out. And as always,
if they've already downloaded it, Monty, in the past, make sure they upgrade.
Yes, that's right.
Of course, it's a free app. It's a free app, folks. So we're not trying to sell something here, but you'll get the full experience if you get the new version of it. Sorry to interrupt, Monty.
No, you're good. Yes, definitely go to the App Store, update that app. Much improved user interface. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback, so head over there and check that out. And if you're not yet a member, definitely head over to marketrebellion.com /try crypto, where you can try our crypto trading room. And also, if you're looking for a broker to trade your crypto assets, head over to Voyager, where you can trade 60 plus assets commission free. And if you do, use code Rebel25 for $25 in crypto when you sign up. But that's all I got for today. Any parting words for our audience, gentlemen?
As always, stay disciplined. But, this, as far as shakeouts, if you would have told me, Monty, or CJ, that we would see a China move and the market barely budged, because, at one time we moved 6 or 7%, but we came back, monumentally off of that as it came back above 40, just in basically minutes. So that was more or less definitely a buy rumor because that gave you a great entry if you were somebody who was willing to buy. And if you're disciplined and you're trading and you bought it real low on any of those dips in any of these cryptos and you did it for a trade, don't forget, when it bounces, take that profit. If you're a hodler, different story.
Absolutely. Remain disciplined and things will be a lot easier for you. So have a great rest of your day. We will see you again tomorrow and take care.